The twin suns were setting over the dusty alien planet of Rigel 9, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. Wind carried the smell of oil, metal, and despair through the crowded streets. This was Sector Delta, known by travelers as the market of lost things. You could buy anything here: broken machines, old droids, stolen ships, and sometimes, even people. A human mechanic named Ethan Cross walked slowly through the market. His jacket was torn, his boots covered in dust, and his tool belt clinked with metal parts as he moved. Ethan wasn't rich, but he had a strong heart and hands that could fix anything. He came here searching for a rare engine part for his repair shop, but what he found instead was something that would change his life forever. The crowd was loud, voices shouting, vendors calling, machines whining. Ethan passed stalls selling glowing crystals, alien food, and cyber implants. Then his ears caught something strange. A man yelling in a deep, cruel voice, "Deaf alien girl for sale. Half price. She's useless but still pretty." Ethan stopped. The man stood on a small metal stage beside a young girl. Her skin was pale silver, her hair like strands of moonlight, and her large, bright eyes looked empty like a doll's. Her wrists were bound with metal cuffs, and a dirty tag hung from her neck with the word "deaf" written in red letters. The crowd laughed cruelly. Some threw scraps of food at her. The man beside her, tall and greasy, smirked and shouted again, "She can't hear a thing." Broken just like her mother. Her stepfather wants her gone, so make your offers. Ethan felt something twist inside him. He had seen many ugly things in the galaxy, but this was worse. A child sold like a broken machine. He took a deep breath and stepped closer. "Why are you selling her?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but heavy. The man sneered. "She's defective. Can't hear, can't talk, no use. Her stepfather's tired of feeding her, so are you buying or just wasting my time, human?" Ethan looked at the girl again. She didn't move. Her face showed no emotion, but her fingers trembled slightly. For a second, Ethan thought she looked scared. "How much?" he asked quietly. The man laughed. "For her? 50 credits, maybe less. She won't even look at you." Ethan reached into his belt and pulled out a small pouch of credits. He didn't argue. "I'll take her," he said. The man blinked, surprised. "You serious?" "Yes," Ethan replied. "Now remove her cuffs." The man shrugged, took the money, and unlocked the girl's restraints. Her thin wrists bore dark marks from the metal. Ethan stepped forward slowly, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "You're safe now," he said softly. "Come with me." The girl looked up at him for the first time. Her eyes were full of something he couldn't name. Fear, confusion, maybe hope. Without a word, she followed him through the noisy market. Outside the auction area, the air felt lighter. The stars began to appear as the suns dipped below the horizon. Ethan led her toward his hoverbike. He handed her a small blanket from his bag. "Here, cover yourself. It's cold out here." She didn't respond, just stared at the blanket like it was a strange object. Still, she wrapped it around her shoulders. Ethan noticed her ears, small and delicate, with faint silver lines running behind them almost like circuits. Maybe some kind of implant, he muttered to himself. Or maybe her species just looks that way. He started the bike. The engine growled softly and dust rose around them. The girl flinched slightly at the sound. Ethan frowned. If she's deaf, why would she react to noise? They rode through the barren plains in silence. The stars above seemed closer here, watching them. After a few minutes, Ethan spoke again, though he wasn't sure why. "My name's Ethan. I'm a mechanic. You don't have to be afraid. I won't hurt you." The girl didn't reply. Her silver eyes just stared at the horizon. When they reached Ethan's workshop, a small metal building filled with tools, ships, and the smell of oil, he led her inside. "You can stay here tonight," he said gently. "There's food and water. I'll find you new clothes tomorrow." She looked around, touching a rusty robot on the shelf. For the first time, he saw a tiny spark of curiosity in her expression. Ethan smiled faintly. "You like machines, huh?" No answer. Just silence. He sighed and turned to make her some food. Behind him, the girl moved quietly, almost soundless. Then, something strange happened. When Ethan dropped a wrench by accident, the metal clanged against the floor. He saw her flinch again. Wait. She heard that. Ethan stared, puzzled. She quickly turned her face away, pretending not to notice. Something didn't fit. Maybe she wasn't deaf after all. Maybe she was hiding something. Ethan's workshop stood on the edge of the desert. an old metal shelter filled with tools, wires, and the smell of oil and smoke. At night, the wind howled through the cracks, whispering like lost voices. Inside, only the soft hum of machines broke the silence. The alien girl sat in the corner, still and quiet. Ethan had given her a blanket, a plate of food, and a bed made from spare parts and old sheets. But she hadn't eaten much. She just stared at the floor, holding her knees close to her chest. Ethan worked nearby, pretending not to watch her. He adjusted an engine, wiped his hands on a cloth, and spoke softly. "Lyra," he said, trying the name he'd chosen for her. "That's what I'll call you. Lyra. Sounds better than the deaf girl, right?" She didn't move. Didn't blink. He sighed and smiled weakly. "You don't have to talk, just rest. You're safe here." He went back to his tools. The sound of sparks filled the air as he welded metal. From the corner of his eye, he noticed her head turn slightly, toward the sound. It was small, almost invisible, but Ethan saw it. She reacted to noise again. He decided not to say anything. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe coincidence. Still, it made him curious. Hours passed. The night grew darker. Lyra sat awake while Ethan finished his work. At last he spoke again. "You can sleep in that room over there," he said, pointing to a small side chamber. "It's warm. There's a light if you're scared of the dark." She didn't answer, but after a moment she stood up and walked toward it. Her steps were light, too careful, too measured. Ethan noticed that she stepped around the creaky parts of the floor, as if she already knew where they were. He frowned. She moves like she's listening. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the dusty window. Ethan woke to the sound of movement. In the workshop, Lyra was standing by one of his machines, his old cleaning bot broken years ago. "What are you doing there?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. Lyra stepped back quickly, her silver eyes wide. The bot beside her suddenly powered up, its lights flickering weakly. Ethan froze. "You fixed that?" She didn't reply. Her hands were covered in grease, her expression blank, but there was a small tremble in her fingers. Ethan checked the bot. It was indeed working, though weakly. He looked at her with surprise. "You're full of secrets, aren't you?" Still no answer. He decided to keep her busy. "All right," he said gently. "If you're going to stay here, you can help me a little. You don't need to talk. Just hand me tools when I ask." He picked up a wrench and pointed to another one nearby. "That one," he said. Lyra watched him carefully and passed it to him without hesitation. Ethan blinked. "Good, you understand me?" She tilted her head slightly, but her lips curved into the smallest smile, quick and shy like a spark in the dark. Ethan smiled back. "You learn fast." They worked together for the next few hours. She didn't speak, but she followed his motions perfectly, almost like she could read his mind or hear his tone somehow. Once, when a loud metal pipe fell, she jumped again. Ethan saw it clearly this time. Her eyes closed tight at the sound. She's not deaf, he thought. She's pretending, but why? That night, as he prepared food, Ethan spoke again. "You can understand me, can't you?" he asked softly. Lyra froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Her shoulders tensed. He leaned forward. "It's okay. You don't have to hide. I won't hurt you." For a moment she looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. Then she shook her head quickly and stared back at her bowl. Ethan sighed. He didn't want to scare her more. He stood and walked to the doorway, gazing at the stars outside. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words. Behind him he heard something faint, barely a whisper. "Thank you." He turned around instantly. Lyra sat frozen, her eyes wide with fear. Her lips had moved. "Did you say something?" Ethan asked. She didn't answer. He took a slow step forward, his voice calm. "You can talk. You can hear me. Why are you pretending?" Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, whispering again, so quiet he could barely hear. "They hurt the ones who can hear." Then she covered her ears with trembling hands, as if trying to block out the world. Ethan stood still, stunned. The workshop lights flickered above them, casting long shadows on the walls. He finally understood. Lyra's silence wasn't weakness. It was fear. Something terrible had happened to her. Something she didn't dare speak of. And Ethan, the human mechanic who only came for spare parts, realized he had bought more than a life. He had found a mystery, a girl hiding a secret that could change everything. The days passed slowly after that night. Ethan didn't ask Lyra any more questions. He didn't mention what she had whispered. He simply worked, letting time soften the silence between them. The workshop was now quieter, but not empty. Lyra began moving around freely. She swept the floor, cleaned the tables, and sometimes handed him tools before he even asked for them. Ethan noticed how fast she learned. She watched his hands, his eyes, his lips, and understood everything without a word. She reminded him of a machine, precise, careful, yet full of something more, something alive. One morning, Ethan found her sitting near a broken ship engine, her fingers tracing the metal parts like she could feel their stories. He smiled. "You like that one? That's a GX7 drive core. Old model. Doesn't work anymore." Lyra tilted her head and pointed at a crack in the shell. Ethan blinked. "You found that?" "Yeah, that's the problem. But I can't fix it without a stabilizer coil." Without hesitation, she walked to the shelf, picked up a tiny copper ring and handed it to him. Ethan laughed. "That's not a coil." But when she pointed again, this time to a different part, he realized she was right. He stared at her, impressed. "You've got good eyes." For a moment she smiled. A real smile. Small, soft, but full of warmth. It was the first time he'd seen her face light up like that. He felt something move in his chest, a strange mix of pride and sadness. Later that evening, as the suns dipped low, the workshop filled with the glow of orange light. Ethan sat on a crate, wiping grease from his hands. Lyra sat nearby, carefully cleaning old gears with a rag. He decided to test something. "Lyra," he said, pretending to speak casually. "Pass me the spanner from the red box." She froze for a second. Then, without turning to look, she reached into the red box and handed it to him. Ethan stared at the tool in his hand, his heart pounding. He whispered softly, "You heard me again." Lyra's eyes lowered. She didn't answer. Her hands trembled slightly. Ethan took a slow breath. He didn't want to frighten her. "It's okay," he said gently. "You don't have to pretend here. You're safe." Still, she stayed silent, so he changed the subject. "Come on," he said after a moment, standing up. "Let's fix something simple." He picked up a small cleaning drone, one of the first machines he'd ever repaired. The poor thing had stopped working months ago, its circuits worn out. He opened the side panel and handed her a screwdriver. "You know what this is?" She nodded once, then "Go ahead. Let's see what you can do." She hesitated at first, then knelt beside him and started working. Her fingers were delicate but sure. She replaced the old wires, adjusted the circuits, and reconnected a few broken links. Ethan watched her with quiet amazement. "You're not just smart," he said softly. "You understand machines. Like you can feel their hearts beating." When she was done, he tapped the power switch. The drone blinked to life, buzzing happily before rolling in a little circle. Ethan grinned. "You did it!" For a second, Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. Then she let out a small laugh, a soft sound like wind chimes. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh, and it made the room feel lighter. "See? Not so scary to make noise," Ethan said, smiling. Lyra's laughter faded, but the smile stayed a little longer. That night, the air outside was cold and full of stars. Ethan sat near his desk, sketching designs for a new ship. Lyra stood near the old radio. He hadn't used it in years, but tonight it was on. The speaker crackled softly, playing old human music from Earth, something slow and full of feeling. Ethan worked quietly, humming along. Then he stopped. The humming continued. He turned his head slowly. Lyra was standing beside the radio, her eyes closed, softly humming the same tune. His breath caught. She's hearing the music. He didn't move or speak. He just listened. Her voice was fragile but beautiful, like something trying to find itself after being lost for a long time. When the song ended, Lyra opened her eyes and froze. She looked at Ethan, her face pale. She whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry." Ethan shook his head gently. "Don't be sorry. You're safe here, remember?" Tears filled her eyes. "You don't understand. They will find me if they know I can hear." "Who will?" Ethan asked quietly, but she didn't answer. She just turned away and hugged herself, trembling. Ethan watched her in silence. He wanted to ask more, but the fear in her eyes stopped him. He knew one thing now for sure: this girl wasn't broken. She was hiding something powerful, and whatever it was, someone out there didn't want her to have it. As the stars glowed above Rigel 9, Ethan looked at the sleeping girl on the workshop bed and whispered to himself, "She's not a machine. She's a heart A mechanical heart that's learning how to beat again. The night was quiet, too quiet. Only the soft humming of the machines filled the workshop. The stars above Rigel 9 looked sharp and cold, like pieces of glass scattered across the sky. Ethan couldn't sleep. His mind kept circling back to Lyra, the way she hummed that tune, the fear in her voice when she said, "They will find me." He sat at his desk, fixing a damaged tool, but his hands weren't steady. Every sound made him glance toward her. Lyra lay on the cot near the back wall, wrapped in a thin blanket. Her breathing was calm, but her hands were clenched tight, even in sleep. Ethan sighed. "What are you hiding, kid?" he whispered to himself. He decided to find out. In the morning, the suns rose like twin fires. Ethan pretended everything was normal. He brewed bitter tea and handed a cup to Lyra. She accepted it silently. He spoke softly. "We need supplies from town. He'll come with me today." Her eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded. Maybe she trusted him now. Maybe she didn't want to be alone. The market was busier than ever, full of noise, lights, and life. Lyra stayed close to him, eyes darting around nervously. The shouting traders made her flinch, especially when someone laughed too loud. "Don't worry," Ethan said gently. "No one's going to hurt you." But deep inside, he wasn't sure. They stopped at a mechanic's stall to buy power cells. The alien merchant, a tall creature with blue skin and narrow eyes, looked at Lyra curiously. "Pretty one," he said with a sly grin. "Where did you get her?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's not for sale," the merchant laughed. "Relax, human. Just asking, but you should be careful. That kind of girl brings trouble." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" The alien leaned closer. "Some species like hers have gifts. Dangerous ones. People pay a lot for them, especially the collectors." Ethan's heart skipped. "Collectors?" The alien nodded. "Yes, they find rare ones, experiment on them. If she's from the Valari race, you better hide her well." Valari. Ethan had never heard the name before. But when he looked at Lyra, he saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Fear. He grabbed the power cells and pulled her away. "Let's go." They returned to the workshop before sunset. Lyra was silent the whole way, her hands gripping the edge of the seat tightly. As soon as they entered, Ethan turned to her. "Lyra, what did he mean? Valari? What are you running from?" She stood still, her back to him. "You shouldn't have taken me," she whispered. He stepped closer. "Why not?" Her voice trembled. "Because they'll come for you too." Ethan frowned. "Who?" She turned slowly, tears shining in her eyes. "The collectors." For a moment there was only silence, the kind that hums before a storm. Ethan's voice dropped low. "Tell me everything." Lyra took a deep breath, her body shaking. "My people, the Valari. We can hear things others cannot. Not just sound, emotion, truth, even lies. My stepfather sold me because he was afraid. He told the collectors I was broken. But they knew I wasn't. They wanted to use me." Her eyes filled with pain. "They put machines in our ears to make us hear what no one should hear. Screams from across the stars, voices of dying worlds. It hurts." Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "That's why you pretended to be deaf." She nodded. "If they thought I was broken, they would stop. But they didn't, so I ran. He found me again. And sold me." She looked down, tears sliding down her silver cheeks. "You bought me and I thought maybe I could hide here." Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to fix this, but this wasn't a broken machine. This was a broken life. He put a hand on her shoulder. "You're not broken, Lyra, you're alive." "That's what matters." She looked up, eyes wet. "You don't understand. They can find me through sound. Through the frequencies I hear." As if to prove her words, a strange noise filled the air. A deep, distant hum, almost below hearing range. Lyra's head jerked up. Her eyes went wide. "They found me," she whispered. Ethan froze. "Who?" "The collectors," she said, her voice trembling. "They're here." Outside, the desert wind began to rise. Lights flickered in the distance, not stars but ships. Ethan's blood ran cold. He turned to the girl beside him, the one he had bought to save and now swore to protect. He grabbed his toolkit and tossed it onto the table. "Then we better start fixing the ship," he said. Lyra looked at him confused. Ethan smiled faintly. "If they're coming for you, they'll have to catch us first." She blinked, then nodded slowly, a spark of courage lighting her eyes. For the first time since he'd met her, Ethan saw something more than fear in Lyra's face. He saw hope, fragile but alive. And as the sound of engines grew louder outside, one thought burned in his mind. He wasn't just repairing machines anymore, he was protecting the heart of a living one. The night outside burned with blue fire. The horizon glowed where the collector ships were landing, their engines roaring like thunder across the desert plains. Inside the small workshop, Ethan worked faster than he ever had in his life. Sparks flew from his tools as he ripped open old engines, welding metal, connecting wires, piecing together a ship that hadn't flown in years. Beside him, Lyra stood still, trembling, her silver eyes reflecting the flickering lights. Every hum, every vibration in the air made her flinch. "They're close," she whispered, her voice soft but sharp with fear. Ethan didn't look up. "Then stop shaking and help me. Hand me the plasma wrench." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she reached for the tool and passed it to him. Her hands were cold, almost metallic. Ethan noticed tiny glowing lines running along her wrists. He frowned. "Lyra, what are those?" She looked down, hesitated, and then spoke quietly. "Marks from the experiments. The collectors put machines under our skin to control our hearing. They called it resonance coding." Ethan stopped working. "You mean they changed you?" She nodded slowly. "They wanted to make my kind perfect listeners, able to hear the smallest signal, even across space. But when they tested it, most of us went mad. The noise never stopped. Her voice trembled. Every whisper, every scream from faraway planet. We heard it all. Even the thoughts of the dying." Ethan's stomach turned. He set the wrench down. "That's horrifying." "They called us broken when we begged them to stop," Lyra continued. "My mother was one of the first. She died after the second experiment. My stepfather sold me so he could save himself." Her words came like cold rain, slow and painful. Ethan clenched his fists. "So that's what you were running from?" "Yes," she said. "And now they're coming again? To finish what they started." He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Not if I can help it." The workshop shook as the sound of engines grew louder. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Ethan looked out the window. 3 small collector crafts hovered in the sky, scanning the ground with red light. He turned back to Lyra. "Get inside the ship, now." She didn't move. "Ethan, if they find us, they'll kill you too." He grinned faintly. "I've been fixing junk on this rock for 10 years. A little danger might make life interesting." Lyra stared at him, uncertain whether to laugh or cry. Then she nodded and climbed into the half-finished ship. Ethan followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The control panel was old and cracked, but the engines purred faintly, alive, ready. He flipped the switches, muttering, "Come on, baby. Don't fail me now." Lyra placed her hands on the side of the console. Her silver lines began to glow brighter, pulsing with rhythm. Ethan looked at her. "What are you doing?" She didn't answer at first. Her eyes closed. The hum in the ship deepened. The light steadied. "I can hear the engines," she said softly. "They speak in frequencies. I can make them sing right." The ship's systems flickered on, brighter than before. Ethan stared, speechless. "You are the frequency," he whispered. She opened her eyes and smiled weakly. "Now you understand why they want me back." Outside, a red beam swept over the workshop. A loud voice echoed through the speakers outside. "Return the Valari girl. The Collector Authority claims ownership. Non-compliance will result in destruction." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Guess they're not here to negotiate." He gripped the controls. "Hold tight," the engines roared. The ship lifted, shaking off years of dust and silence. The collectors fired first, bright plasma bolts tearing through the sand, exploding near the building. Lyra screamed as the noise vibrated in her skull. "I can hear their signals," she cried. "They're locking on!" Ethan swore and pulled the lever hard. The ship shot into the sky, weaving through laser fire. Sparks exploded across the hull. "Can you block them?" he shouted. She closed her eyes, hands pressed to her ears. Her glowing lines flared like lightning. "I'll try." A strange hum filled the cabin. Deep, powerful, almost musical. The collector ship suddenly stuttered midair, their lights flickering. "What the hell?" Ethan gasped. "They can't hear each other now," Lyra said, her voice strained. "I changed their signal pattern. But it won't last long." Ethan grinned. "Long enough?" He slammed the throttle forward. The ship shot upward, breaking through the clouds, the stars opening above them like a sea of silver fire. As the planet shrank below, Ethan looked at her. "You saved us." She shook her head weakly. "No, we only escaped." "They'll keep looking. They always do." Ethan smiled gently. "Then we'll keep running. And this time they'll be chasing a human and a Valari together." Lyra met his eyes. And for the first time, she didn't look afraid. For the first time, she looked free. The stars were a blur outside the ship's glass as it tore through the dark sky. Plasma trails glowed behind them like falling comets. Inside the small cabin, metal rattled, warning lights blinked, and the sound of engines roared in Ethan's ears. But he didn't care. They were still alive. "Altitude stable," he muttered, gripping the controls with both hands. "Engines at 80% power." Lyra sat beside him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Her hands were pressed to the console again, feeling the hum of the machine like it was alive. Her skin shimmered with soft pulses of light that matched the rhythm of the engines. "They're still tracking us," she said quietly. "3 ships behind. One closing fast," Ethan cursed under his breath. "Figures. Can't ever get an easy day." He flicked a switch and the rear display lit up, showing 3 red dots moving closer. The collectors weren't giving up. Their sleek black ships looked like blades cutting through the sky. "What do they want with you so badly?" he asked, eyes fixed on the screen. Lyra's voice was low. "They want to build an army of listeners. People who can hear what others cannot. They think control starts with silence." Ethan shook his head. "Sounds like madness." "To them it's power," she replied softly. The ship shook violently as a plasma shot grazed their hull. A warning alarm screamed through the cockpit. Ethan gritted his teeth. If they want to chase, they've got one. He jerked the throttle forward. The ship plunged downward, slicing through the clouds toward the endless desert. The stars vanished behind them, replaced by sand and wind. "Hold on," he yelled. Lyra clutched the seat, her knuckles white. The wind howled against the hull. The ship's wings trembled, straining under the pressure. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I can help." He glanced at her. "How?" She closed her eyes, the light under her skin glowing brighter. "I can hear the collector's signal. Their ships talk to each other, through sound, not radio. I can confuse them," he frowned. "You can do that?" "Yes, but it will hurt." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Do it." Lyra took a deep breath. A low hum began in her throat, soft at first, then deeper, stronger. It was a sound Ethan felt more than heard, like the heartbeat of the ship itself. The cabin lights flickered. The air vibrated. Outside, the collector ship suddenly veered off course, their flight paths breaking apart as their signals scrambled. "It's working," Ethan shouted, but Lyra was shaking. Blood trickled from her nose, her skin flickering with unstable light. "Lyra," Ethan shouted. She forced a weak smile. "Keep flying. I'll hold them off." He wanted to argue, but he knew she was their only chance. He focused on the controls, pushing the ship toward the canyons ahead, a maze of stone towers and shadows. "Hang on," he said. "We're losing them in there." The ship plunged into the canyon. Rocks flew past in a blur. The engines screamed as Ethan guided them through narrow gaps and sharp turns. Behind them, the collector ship struggled to follow. A sudden explosion lit the sky. One of the enemy ships had crashed into a canyon wall. "Two left," Ethan shouted. Lyra's humming faltered, replaced by short gasps. "I can't hold much longer." Ethan's heart raced. "Just a little more. We're almost there." He spotted a deep cavern ahead, large enough to hide them. "That's it." He steered the ship hard and slid into the cavern just as another plasma bolt tore past. The engines sputtered and went silent. Dust fell from the ceiling as they came to a stop in the darkness. Only the faint hum of the ship remained. Ethan looked over. Lyra had collapsed against the console, breathing weakly. Her glow had faded to a dim shimmer. "Hey, stay with me," he said, shaking her shoulder gently. Her eyes fluttered open. "Are we safe?" "For now," he said. "You did it. You saved us," she smiled faintly. "No, we saved each other." Ethan sat back, breathing hard. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside, the desert wind howled, covering their trail. He finally broke the silence. "You know, for someone who was supposed to be deaf, you sure make a lot of noise." Lyra laughed softly, weak, but real. "And for a human, you talk too much." They both smiled, tired but alive. Ethan glanced at the stars visible through the canyon roof. "Rest now. We'll fix the ship in the morning." Then we'll find somewhere they can't reach. Lyra nodded, closing her eyes. Maybe a place where silence means peace, not fear. He looked at her, then at the dark sky beyond. Yeah, he whispered. We'll find it. Outside, the night was still. The collector ships searched the skies above, but deep in the canyon, two fugitives, one human and one alien, had vanished into the silence. For the first time in a long while, silence didn't feel like danger. It felt like freedom. The sun rose slowly over the desert canyons of Rigel 9, turning the sands into a sea of gold. Inside the dark cavern, the old ship rested in silence, its metal body scarred from the night's escape. Ethan woke first. His back ached, his throat was dry, and his mind was full of the same thought. They're still out there. He turned to Lyra. She was asleep beside the control panel, her breathing soft, her silver hair spread across her shoulders. The glow under her skin had faded, but faint pulses still shimmered like tiny stars. Ethan smiled tiredly. You really did it, kid, he whispered. He walked to the ship's outer hatch, peeking through a crack. The sky was empty. No sign of the collectors. For now they were safe. But he knew it wouldn't last. He sat beside Lyra and began working quietly, repairing the damaged circuits and burned-out wires. The ship had suffered too much and it wouldn't fly far. Still, he worked because fixing things was the only way he knew how to keep hope alive. After some time, Lyra stirred. Ethan, she said weakly. He looked up and smiled. Hey, you're awake. Her eyes opened slowly, the silver reflecting the dim light. Are we safe? For now. The collectors lost our signal. We're hidden under a canyon wall and they can't scan this deep. Lyra nodded slowly. You should leave me here, Ethan frowned. What? Why would I do that? If they find you with me, they'll kill you, she said softly. It's better if you go, he shook his head. I didn't drag us halfway across the desert just to leave you behind. That's not how humans work. Her voice trembled. Why? Why would you risk so much for me? Ethan leaned back, looking up at the cracked ceiling above them. The light from the sun filtered through, thin but warm. Because someone has to, he said quietly. Out here, everyone's busy surviving. No one stops to care. Maybe that's what makes us human, and we still try. Lyra watched him silently. She wanted to believe that. As the hours passed, the two of them worked together again, patching the ship, cleaning the filters, testing the thrusters. It was slow work, but comforting. At one point, Ethan turned on his old radio, the same one that had played the Earth song before. It crackled, then hummed with a faint melody, soft and haunting. Lyra froze. The sound filled the small cabin like a memory. That song again, Ethan said with a smile. It's an old one. From Earth. Humans used to send music into space, hoping someone out there might hear it. She looked at him, her eyes glistening. Maybe I did, Ethan chuckled. Maybe you did. The song continued, and Lyra's lips began to move, quietly at first, then with growing strength. She sang along. Her voice was pure and full, a sound that made the air feel alive. Ethan stared in awe. For a moment it felt like the universe itself was listening. When the song ended, there was only silence again. But it wasn't the kind of silence that frightened Lyra anymore. It was peaceful. She turned to Ethan. When I was small, I dreamed of hearing something beautiful. I thought maybe the stars had voices. I think I finally heard them today. Ethan smiled. That's not the stars, Lyra, that's you. As the day faded, Ethan powered up the repaired engines. She won't fly far, he said, tapping the console, but maybe far enough to find a new place. Somewhere quiet, Lyra nodded. Not too quiet, she said softly. I like sound now, Ethan laughed. Fair enough, he turned to her. So where to? She closed her eyes, listening, not with her ears, but with that strange sense deep inside her. There's a small moon east of this planet. I can feel its hum. No machines, no collectors, just wind. Sounds perfect, Ethan said. The ship rose slowly, shaking but steady. Dust swirled beneath them as they lifted out of the canyon. The desert stretched endlessly below, the light of the setting suns painting the sky in gold and crimson. Lyra stood by the window watching. Ethan, she said softly, you showed me something no one ever did. He looked over. What's that? Her eyes shone like liquid silver. That humans don't just fix machines. They fix hearts, Ethan chuckled. Yeah, well, yours was a tough one, she smiled. And yours was lonely, he didn't deny it. Maybe not anymore. As they broke through the clouds, the last light of Rigel 9 faded behind them. Ahead, 1,000 stars waited, and each one a promise, each one a story. Lyra closed her eyes, listening to the hum of the ship. To the faint song of space beyond, she whispered, "I can hear the universe now." Ethan smiled, eyes on the stars. "Good, then let's make it listen to us." The camera of the story would pull back, 2 travelers in a small, battered ship disappearing into the starlit void. And in the silence that followed, humanity spoke, not through words, but through compassion, courage, and the sound of a human heart beating beside an alien one. The end.